Today I'm going to be talking to you about still life art in the Dutch Golden Age, which lasted from roughly 1588 to 1672. As we learned in class, this is a period of increased prosperity for the Dutch Republic due to their maritime expertise, robust trading capabilities along water routes, and trade monopolies with other countries. In terms of earlier histories that discuss this era, there were seminal works in the 19th and 20th centuries that were often written by Dutch historians who focused on national pride. These historians actually coined the term Dutch Golden Age and wrote with great reverence about the time period, leaving out discussion of the colonization or slave trade during this era. Today, we're going to look at how the Dutch Golden Age influenced art by tracking historical works over the last 4 decades. So the first book we're going to look at was written in 1984. This book's argument is relatively simple. It asserts that the Netherlands produced an incredible amount of quality art during the Dutch Golden Age, but the authors here attempt to place the development of this art in a more social and economic context. Prior to this work, there had been other art histories that worked to analyze artists from the period and uncover symbolism, but they typically approach their analyses biographically by painter and without social context. So the index of this book is still firmly a list of artists, so the expectation there, I believe, is that this is still seen as an art history, but it lays the groundwork for important social context to come. The next book we're going to look at was written by Simon Schama in 1988, so a few years after the previous entry, and is primarily a cultural history. The still life paintings that I'm kind of tracking throughout these different histories are less the central focus of this book and are seen as evidence of the larger cultural changes happening for Dutch people. Shama argues that Dutch culture during the Golden Age was influenced by both the influx of wealth for the middle class and the reckoning with that wealth due to Protestant and Catholic ideologies. So what he adds to the historiography is the point of view that still life paintings and art in general from this period are representative of the Dutch people's struggle to balance these two realities, how to be morally good while also being rich, essentially. So of the works I chose, this book deals the most with the complications of the Dutch identity. So the next one we're going to look at is Art and Commerce in the Dutch Golden Age, which was written by Michael North in 1997. This work is both an economic and social history, and North adds to the historiography, I think, by delving much deeper into the economic relationship between artists and patrons. He argues that due to the wealthy middle class now becoming the patrons of art, the artists changed exactly what they depicted to accommodate this new class of art buyers. So the artists became more entrepreneurial as a result. This change in market, combined with Dutch Protestant culture, drove depictions of more secular, relatable life, like still life art, as opposed to the previous drivers that included more religious iconography. Okay, so jumping into the 21st century, this book is familiar from perusal. Harold Cook wrote Matters of Exchange in 2007. While there are elements of social, cultural, in economic history here, the book is primarily classified as an intellectual history. What's different or noteworthy about this work, I think, is the somewhat postmodern angle from which Cook approaches the impacts of trade. He argues that the economic boom influenced everything from scientific discoveries and the transfer of new ideas and philosophies and culture and art, yes, but his argument is more that the influence of this period was a lot larger than money and art. By taking the analysis out of the realm of high culture only, he proves out that all facets of society were impacted by the resulting increase of scholarship that trade provided. Out of the works I chose, this is also our first great example of a transnational history because Cook talks about the interconnectedness and impact of global or across borders information exchange. So my final two works are from the previous decade. In this more recent historiography, we see a focus on more specificity or niche topics. So these are essentially microhistories. This book on the screen is a social and cultural history written by Jan Burgers in 2013. And it's highly specific to the history of the lute in Dutch culture and its representation in art. I included this work because it's a pretty great example of a post-cultural turn re-examination of one single component of Dutch Golden Age art. And by evaluating the instrument singularly, Burgers is able to extrapolate quite a bit about what it meant when we see the lute in still life paintings, how it signified wealth in a certain place in society. Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll in the Dutch Golden Ages from 2017. So this work is also a post-cultural turn look at the lives of young men in this period. And I included this book because by using still life among his sources, Roberts is able to tell us things about the reality of boys becoming men at university at the time. So, for instance, he points out, I think it's interesting, he points out that certain glasses that you see in a lot of Dutch still life and how those specific glasses not only represent the loftier symbol of the transience of life, but they're also the glasses young men used to play drinking games. So I like this book because it ties the Dutch youth so clearly to today's counterculture youth, and it's distinctive because it feels like a truly modern and fresh look at a previously underexamined subset of cultural history. Current developments. So moving forward to what's happening today with Dutch Golden Age historians, around the turn of the century, there started to be some postmodern pushback against the term Dutch Golden Age, or at least an acknowledgement that due to the era's dependence on the slave trade and colonialism, it certainly wasn't a golden age for everyone, and terming it as such minimizes the whole picture. This change in perception has even impacted the art world as the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam in 2019 announced they would no longer be using the term. So as we've seen in some of these works, the postmodern or post-colonial approach is continuing to reframe history written about this period. Historians continue to examine any number of topics using Dutch still life as an inspiration or a resource to learn more about the culture of the era. And here are my sources. Thank you for listening.